Well, hello and welcome back. I am your host, Random Randy. I want to say welcome to everybody out there. We're going to look into a couple of things today. Basically, I'm just bringing you all with me on some digging I'm doing, and that digging is in regards to time. That last video that I put out, which just kind of outlining that gentleman with the plasma moon video. Some of the things he says in the intro kind of sparked something deep within me, and so I'm investigating. Right, I'm investigating now. I just spoke with Kalen over at Strange Neighborhood and put a episode together with her, going through the idea of time reversal. What is it? How does it tie to like the occult reversal principle, that sort of thing? I mean, I kind of briefly touched on it, in my last episode, but I wanted to kind of dig in more deeply here and sort of outline some of the things that her and I spoke about and kind of give this to all of you out there and just kind of let you know where I'm at, kind of the direction that I'm heading with my research and that sort of thing. Um, it's a pretty deep and elusive sort of topic, that of time, but I will do the best I can and also try to link back to why these subjects are so important when we're looking at our historical narrative and our historical timeline and that sort of thing. So, why don't we go ahead and start out with a period of time, right? The 1900s, which we're going to call them the, or this timeline rather, we're going to call it the no ether timeline. Okay. We all are living within the timeline where the ether is denied, ether denial, right? Big time. So that's where we're living. We're coming out of this timeline, it seems. Things are becoming more and more relevant as far as the ether is concerned, more and more figured into the daily lives of folks via things like scalar energy and, all of these sorts of things that were considered kind of like new wave and new age for a very long time are kind of coming to light. Of course, there's always, the backward spin of everything that you will find in media that will tell you all of these things are useless or evil or this and that, right? So my personal experiences aside, uh, I think all of you out there most likely understand that ether, or the 0 point, as it's known in modern terms, is in existence. It is a thing, right? The that which everything flows from. Okay, the medium with which energy is able to flow and transverse around and move and all of these sorts of things. There's a something behind it all, the behind the scenes of what we see in our physical reality, right? We live in a time where that is all just outright denied by the mass machine that we have been taking a part in for most of our lives, most of us. And so that's the time we're coming out of. There's a set of laws and theories that fall in right about the time in question. So, like the early 1900s, kind of late 1800s, where everything seems to go very, very physical, right? We have the supposed third industrial revolution. I think there have been many ups and downs in the past, but we have that industrial revolution that we're taught about in history class sort of coming to a head right about that time, right? We have the repopulation of America. However, why ever that happened, we'll deal with it another time. But we nonetheless have the orphan trains, and we have the digging out of cities and the regrading of massive quantities of acreage, right? Just huge, huge parcels of land being completely reconfigured. We have this happening all across the country, all across many countries, in fact. We have a lot of wars and sort of colonial endeavors taking place or wrapping up right around this time. So there's a lot of things going on in history right about this time. And this is what eggs me on, kind of leads me to dive into so many of these topics, and so much of the information that I'm coming into contact with is sort of on the back of the hidden history side of things, right? What's really going on? We've been given our milk when we were babies as the, you know, uh, as the hermeticists would say, right? We've been given our milk. And now, guys and gals, now that we've grown into men and women, uh, it is time for the meat of the situation, right? So that's what I've been digging into. That's what I've been looking for. What is the meat of the situation? And, to anybody who is outside of what can be considered in this realm at this time, I use air quotes for a specific purpose, higher learning. Okay. This is institutionalized higher learning. Let's look at it like that. There might be some groups or some sects or some divisions of higher learning, academic higher learning, right? That have access to this information, or that this information regarding time and the way things are behind the scenes, the ethereal information, the background noise, right? All of that stuff has an effect on everything else. Okay. That which we do not see has a drastic effect on that which we do see. So, that being said, we're going to look into a couple of things today. One's called the no ether theorem. And I just find this interesting because this is a period of time when we're taught to deny that the ether exists, that sort of thing. And this particular theorem is specifically suited only to the three-dimensional physical space. Okay, so it's perfect, right? It's perfect for the purposes of this last century that we're coming out of. All right, so we're going to take a quick look at that here. And then we're going to explore a couple of things that I had discussed with Strange Neighborhood with Kalen over there. And I'm going to touch on those. I've got some notes. So, I appreciate everybody's patience with me here. This is a mind-boggling set of topics that underlie everything that we are taking part in every day. Every single last one of us as observers is causing and affecting so much around us. So we're going to dig into some of that. This is going to be pretty epic. So, buckle up. And I'll try to keep it relatively brief and to this one subject. And we'll do another episode on maybe like another small part of the subject. We've got some things to look forward to for you all. We're looking at, of course, time reversal. What does that look like? We're going to get into a little bit of like quantum physics and the symmetry effects that are necessary within time and space and so on. I mean, there's so much. We're going to look at event horizons. What is that? Is each and every last one of us the equivalent of a black and white hole combined? We're going to look into so many different things, right? That, you might just want to put your seatbelt on because you might get a little shook. All right. This is some incredible information. Vast majority of it is available to every last one of us on Wikipedia. You can at least take the seeds of what this information is from those sites and run down your rabbit holes, guys. Like look through this stuff. Look into it. A lot of people are very focused on the events themselves, right? And that's awesome. We need that. We need to have some focus on the events, who, the what, the where, right? And then behind it all, we have this underlying sort of why. And that is kind of the realm that I enjoy traversing and just being a part of. The catalysts, how things look in a bigger sort of outside of the box mentality, right? And when we're dealing with time, we're dealing with certain aspects of this world that are just not handed to us. I feel very fortunate that the information nonetheless is still available for us to inquire about. So I'll point out where I'm gathering this information in the show notes and that sort of thing. But why is this important? Why is this important? And what leads to the thought process of looking into this stuff? Well, many of us, have heard of CERN. We've heard of the possibility that time has been messed around with by, secret groups and organizations, right? So we have the conspiracy side of it. We have the possibility that there are folks running rampant, on things. We have nods to these sorts of ideas and movies throughout the last probably 75 years or so, maybe more. We have nods to these things: Twilight Zone, Outer Limits, you name it, right? It's always on the fence of fiction or on underneath the label of fiction, right? So we've got that. We've got the occult reversal concept, right? I kind of spoke about last episode, which not too many people keyed in on, but that's fine. I was just informing you folks out there how it is that I go about sparking these dives and things like that. So, I'm thankful for those of you that did take a look at that, and perhaps it has opened your eyes to seeing different aspects of information that's handed to us through conspiracy and that sort of thing in a different light, and being able to sort of disseminate information which may be hidden to those who haven't, progressed along in the thought field quite enough to grasp these things and catch them, right? There's a lot of stuff thrown our way, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, all of you out there. There's a lot of information thrown our way in the midst of garbage, right? And I know you all know this. I know you all see this every single day. I know that many of us just see the garbage and we just decide to discard it, right? Blah, throw that away. So I'm not saying pick through your garbage, folks, but when it comes to your informational streams, beware that there is the diamond in the rough, right? So they're out there, right? And I feel like that 1965 plasma moon video has a couple of those, couple of insights that we can take some things away from. Okay, so we're going to be looking at some time-based stuff, and it's incredible. And now when we're dealing with time and we're dealing with the ability to affect time, we are inadvertently, in a sense, kind of dealing with the ability to travel vast distances instantly if we can gauge the effects accordingly, and sort of create a big enough manipulation and that sort of thing. So I mean, this concept really is tied into so many different aspects of everything that's happening. Now I'm going to kind of go out in front here and say that when we're talking about those who are doing any manipulation and that sort of thing, something you have to be open-minded to is that there are perhaps other sorts of minds in the universe aside from our very narrow understanding of human mentality, right? And many of us have been kept in the dark a lot of years to the capabilities of the human mind, as it were, also. So keep that in mind. There are human minds that will blow your mind, right? Like there's information being adapted and transfigured by folks out there that will just melt your understanding of the world and turn it to dust. Okay, and some of these concepts and things that I'm going to attempt to elaborate on are very much like that. They're very, very elusive and sort of slippery, until you sort of give up the understanding that you've been sold your entire life, that you know everything, or that everything is known by something within what we call Earth, or this system as it can be known, right? There are certain variables in the equations of time and space and being and happening and cause and effect. There are certain things that you would need a superior, in a sense, or something beyond what we see with our senses. You would need that sort of masterful observer, right? And these things have been known throughout time by different names: angels, demons, gods, goddesses. These sorts of ideas are not without precedent or like without premise, right? These are realistic for a reason. These are realistic within the laws of time and quantum mechanics. And once you begin to understand just how powerful you are as an observer, and this means every last one of you, if you have the capacity to think and observe, you are causing so much more than you realize that you're causing. It's amazing, absolutely amazing. So, take the time, smell the roses, dig into the rabbit holes, just go deep, you know what I mean? And bring somebody with you if you can. Attempt it if you don't feel you can. This is my attempt to bring many of you with me on this incredible sort of dive into the unknown, as it were. I mean, all of this stuff was unknown to me until very recently, until I made the choice to look into it and to observe a little bit more and a little bit more, right? Become a more masterful observer, and thereby, be more. Okay. So we're not just talking about the sort of conspiracy side of it. We're talking about the real deal. What's behind it all? What's going on, right? And in order for us to even comprehend what's going on, we need time. We need the ever forward marching motion to create our memories and install them into our subconscious so that we can then imagine the next thing to be, thereby creating it in a sense, right? And I know many of you out there say, well, I don't create every single moment in my life, or do you? Right? so, okay. Now, some ideas that I'll throw out for you is how does the manipulation of the mass mindset, right, of the hive mind, of the group think, how does that manipulation sort of factor in or set a stage for time to be affected, right? So if you think about each and every last person's stream of thought as variables within a giant equation, you think of their thought as just data points. And I'm not trying to minimalize what everybody has going on in their life. Life is a beautiful thing. Enjoy, have fun. We're here, make the most of it, all that sort of fun stuff. Now, how does the manipulation of that mass mindset set the stage for a reversible event? Now, I'm not going to go to long lengths to demonstrate what a reversible equation is, but a vast majority of physical processes are reversible equations. Okay, so if you want to look into that sort of stuff, go check out the episode I did over at Strange Neighborhood. She's got all of the links going to be putting up for all of the papers that I tied to that set of information. So go check that out over there. But we're just going to keep moving forward here. Basically, the idea is, if you've ever noticed the mass mindset and wondered why it seems to be cyclical or closed loop, it just keeps going around in the news cycle, the circle, right? It keeps going around and round and back to a beginning. Now, this motion of cause and effect, so causing people to be triggered, thereby creating an anxiety, and then they come back down from that anxiety and then causing that trigger again. This is cyclical behavior, right? This is a cyclical mindset. Okay, that's what we can look at certain aspects of the mass mindset as. These are cyclical, right? Coming back in on themselves, even though they themselves, the physical body, is traveling through time and space to a certain end, their mindset is staying in a closed loop. Now, that sort of sets a stage, okay, which is why all of the information is put across to re-trigger and keep people in these closed loops. It's beneficial, of course. We're going to go down conspiracy route and talk about it's beneficial to those in power and that sort of thing. Absolutely, right? But is it serving another purpose? Is it serving a purpose for the experience as a whole for the vast lot of us? Is the idea that I'm kind of sort of playing with here. And that's that if you can keep a certain volume of the observers in the field having a certain experience, are you thereby creating a suspension in the entropy of time? Like, are you creating a sort of Ouroboros or self-sealing time circle that you can then keep introducing a different variable or a different way of thinking, right? At the end of the loop. And this may be where we're coming into now with the redivulgence of old world information and that sort of thing. This may be what's happening. We don't see it from where we're sitting as perspective. We don't see that we see things that are different as yesterday, but really ask yourself how much of the mass mindset that you see all of these folks partaking in is exactly the same as it was a year ago or 10 years ago. And you see the cycle being repeated. And sort of once you step outside of that cycle, you can look at it as a more masterful observer and thereby recognize it, see it, step outside of it, be apart from it, right? Engage in a new cycle for yourself, right? So that's kind of what I'm driving at with that. It's a little, new age, on the fence, weird, whatever. But like, listen, man, our minds, what we do with our thoughts every single day, every moment of every single day causes so much more than we're taught in, rhetorical institutional upbringing. We're not taught to think that way, okay? But that's okay. We have opportunity to think that way, to step outside of that mass mindset and see it from the outside, right? And some folks know that mass mindset is the matrix. I think that there are many different layers of what one can call control or manipulation, right? And each of these layers would require a sort of will on your own behalf, because you are the observer. And so you have that power for yourself to change your perspective and your point of view. So once you take that power, you become a sort of exemplary observer, right? Driving instead of being driven. Okay. So when I'm speaking of time manipulation, it's not just the linear sort of time that we've been trained to understand. It is the manipulation of equations within a certain system. That system can be the mass mindset. So you manipulate the equations or the information flowing in through the news, through media, through that sort of thing. So it's manipulated. Now that keeps it in that closed loop or that news cycle. So that's for everyone out there that wants to understand how this is being used to affect the real time now. Okay. So thereby, kind of sort of in a roundabout definition, it is a sort of reversibility, right? Because the progress of the mind, the progress of the consciousness wants to trend ever upward. Okay. So anything that's going to perturb that process, to bring that mindset or that consciousness back to the previous point, back to the trigger or back to the lower vibration emotion, is essentially manipulating the time of that particular observer, if that makes sense. Okay, now, so that now that we've got that out of the way, we are going to the term that you can use for operator, like an observer, can be an operator. In the mathematical fields, we have what's called a linear operator and an antilinear operator. These would be the observer within the equation and the observer outside of the equation, in a sense of speaking. So this stuff is backed up, folks, in your physics understandings and that sort of thing. So when I tell you these rabbit holes are deep, they go real deep, and they might even touch on understanding. So it's very important to, when you have something come to mind and it just bugs at you, to dig into it, sink your teeth into it, get in there and find out what's going on. Do it for yourself. You know what I mean? Do it for your colleagues and your friends and stuff that are out there sort of researching all of this stuff also. And but they're looking at it from their own perspective. Bring your perspective, everybody. Bring it to the table. Don't worry about, oh, I don't want to do this and be seen or what. Like, listen, do it for you. Do it for yourself. Okay. Anyway, upbeat moment in the past. Let's go ahead and move forward here. So as we saw in the video on the last episode, the irreversibility of time. So whether or not it can be reversed is decided by the theory and not by what can be done with manipulation. Okay. So man is here to manipulate. What does man do? Finds a way and manipulates. And you know, it's interesting. It's interesting. This topic is blowing my mind. So we went through how to pull that information out of information that's full of garbage, kind of. Let's see here. Now, and when I'm speaking of time reversal, remember it is not a wholesale reversal of everybody's time and their memories, although this could be a possibility to a certain extent. Uh, this would be sort of a manipulation or a shift or change within what can be looked at as like maybe an individual timeline or a certain amount of the mass observer timeline. But it would require, observers to resonate with it in order to go back and manipulate. So it has to have had an effect essentially to be a cause. So, okay. Again, this information could be what had been factored into things like the Montauk Project or the Philadelphia experiment. So again, when I say that, looking at conspiracy and this information that's sort of hidden, you can imagine what sorts of processes and sets of information were used to create the effect of, turning a ship invisible, possibly popping it outside of time altogether, right? So like I had explained to Kalen, I said, you would need a source of energy and you would need the data, right? You would need the data, you would need the source of energy, and then you would need what you can look at or understand as will. Okay. I'm not sure if the will of the observer can be a technological device, like a powerful enough AI can be a strong enough observer outside of the equation to rewind certain events and or information within, but it's a possibility. So let's see here. Yeah, lots of subliminal information, lots of stuff hidden within, pop culture or that sort of thing. Lots of little Easter eggs and nuggets in there for you to carry yourself to a new realization, right, about what's happening in the world. So uh, let's look at this theorem here, and I call this like the 1900 theorem because it's just perfect for that era of time. Hopefully, I'm not being too loud for you folks there. Anyway, let's go ahead and take a look. All right, so we've got it pulled up. This is no ether's theorem. Okay. No lie. It's no ether's theorem. Why is it no ether's theorem? Because this only applies in smooth symmetries over physical space. What is physical space? Right? The three linear directions we are all familiar with. Okay. So this is Noether's theorem, stating that every differentiable symmetry of the action of a physical system with conservative forces has corresponding conservation law. Okay. And the lady who was the mathematician who published this is Emmy Noether. Now, what do we know? We know that in entertainment, they win what? An Emmy. Daytime TV wins an Emmy, right? Have you guys ever sat and watched daytime TV? You want to talk about cyclical mindset, right? So, Emmy Noether, 1915 and published in 1918. So, when we're looking at the world of the world, this spin on reality that we find ourselves in, we know that nothing is by chance. As much as it seems like a chance happening, everything is effect by a cause, right? So, is it a coincidence that later on, and I don't know what year the Emmys started running, but that they use that particular name? Remember that we are dealing with a certain control system that has built within it the purpose of keeping us from understanding the ether, right? They have removed all of our antiquitech and all that such stuff, done away with it. in an effort for there to be no ether, right? So that's coincidence or no. You all can make the decision. I will relate also that there are some kind of occult happenings in the numerology down here, right? uh Having to do with Hamiltonian mechanics. So listen, we have all of these groups of individuals writing laws, right? Writing laws of mechanics, laws of motion. Now, what do we know about many of these individuals? We know, of course, that they were, generally speaking, of Masonic origin or some similar uh, subgroup, right? We know this. We also know that they were responsible for creating the information that then became the textbooks of the world, and that the world that we know has been operating on ever since. Okay, so we know these things. We know that there is ether, first and foremost. How do we know that? Simply because anything is. And these are the understandings that they have, removed from common knowledge, until very recently. And I find it interesting still that they're still sort of kind of burying the ether within what's known as quantum mechanics. And so that's interesting in itself. So it's basically a separation, as we have clearly seen in the world. This place seems to love taking things apart. So it's a separation of everything that used to be sort of considered kind of one, you know. Quantum mechanics and general relativity are just sort of two ends of the same thought stream, if that makes sense to folks out there. Okay, so no ethers theorem. Interesting topic, right? Interesting little thing to look at. What brings you to this, Randy, is after looking at time reversal invariance, right? Remember that gentleman in that 1965 video speaks of that briefly for that first 3 minutes and 33 seconds, right? So I'd love it if this would load up for us, guys. But anyway, so I'm looking at time reversal invariance. What is that? Turns out that it's only invariant until it's manipulated, meaning time reversal can be done and has more than likely been done. I can't speak from a first person perspective. It's interesting that that's not pulling up right now, but that's fine. We've got another one right here. Let's see if this bad boy wants to pop up for us. Probably not. Look at that. So perhaps we have to stick with the Wikipedias, and I'll show you some things that I'm going to be looking into a little bit further here. Time translation symmetry. Okay. We're also going to be looking at time reversal symmetry. So many interesting time related processes. Okay. And this all has to do with like mathematical or transmutation. You can look at mathematical transformation as a transmutation. So these were all like sort of aspects of alchemy, back before the no ether age. Okay. And I think I might just start calling the 1900s the no ether age, right? Because it makes sense. So why is conservation of energy such a big thing? So there's no coincidence. There's epic underlying meaning within everything that we see in popular culture and the deeper sort of layers of reality and what's going on. Okay. So it's possible that while conservation of energy on the macro scale that we see in our world today may not be what is touted as a giant problem, it might actually be something else being referred to and carried into the external, but it might be an internal sort of process like this. Okay. And if we know that energy can neither be created nor destroyed, then what is the massive struggle in this world to conserve that, which can just be regenerated, right? So, and to think that we don't have the capability of generating energy without mechanical effort is, I think, wrong, but we'll get to that point. It seems to be kind of coming out of the woodwork, which is awesome. But I mean, we got a lot of crazy stuff going on here. And I mean, we're looking into time crystals. What is a time crystal? Freaking wild, dude. Wild stuff. Explains a lot about why possibly we might be required to go through the seemingly symmetrical and pattern based ebb and flow of behavior, of information, why these things might be occurring in what seems to be a very, very distinct pattern. And it may have to do with this sort of information. Okay. And when we consider that we are the micro to a larger macro, right? And that within this realm, we have a micro that is a macro to yet its further micro realm. Okay. These things are corresponding states. All right. And we have a correspondence between some of these time-based quantum system happenings, like time crystals. Okay. We have a correspondence in the field that we know as reality. We have this correspondence. All right. That's why when you can look at some of this information, and even if you can just, sort of understand the general gist of it, it tells you a lot about what you see beyond you. Okay. It's wild stuff, man. I'm looking forward to gaining some tribe members who are diving into this sort of information and would be willing to discuss it at length. So if anybody out there is a quantum mechanic or is a mathematician and understands what the sort of translation of a lot of these topics into what we can call slaves English, please feel free and reach out to me. In fact, feel very compelled to reach out to me, please. So let's take a look here. Speaking of time reversal a little bit, I found this incredibly interesting. So variables that do not change upon time reversal include these things here. So some things that they can or the they, when I say they, I mean like an outside observer. If something were to put into cause a change in what we know is the field of life, right? Earth, whatever you want to call it, everybody, like this dynamic system that we're taking part in. If something were to be changed, are there limits on what can be changed and what can be pushed around? I look at this and I see that perhaps these might be some of those limits and some of those details. Okay. And we're looking at just regular Wikipedia stuff. Okay. And there are certain ways, it seems, to sort of step around entropy, which means getting away from time flowing into the future. There seem to be certain loopholes for that. There's some information here that I found incredibly interesting on black holes, and it discusses something very interesting, which I was speaking again with Kalen about, is the possibility that we are in a unique space between what can be looked at as a black hole and a white hole. Hence the whole checkered floor, masonry, dual pillar, sort of dual aspect, sort of sense and processes that happen in this realm, right? Of course, dualism might be something that is everywhere in the universe, but we might just be in that sweet spot, everybody, that's right between that dark and light, right? Which is what you can look at as like free will. Okay. So something I'm going to point out, and this is part of correspondence, right? Like I was talking about, is when you have, all right, hypothetical object known as a white hole. Okay. It's the opposite of a black hole. Black hole has a beginning and is inescapable. A white hole has an ending and cannot be entered. Okay, this might be why we have to be like born into this place and lose all of our previous information. Is because we're not actually entering. Okay, we're shifting into it. Like we're popping in. We're popping in. That big bang happens when we're in the womb, right? When we're first just created, there's that flash of light. Boom, that's the big bang. All right, that's us shifting into this dimension or reality. Okay, so and it discusses the forward and reverse light cones. This might have a correspondence with what we see as sun and moon, guys. All right. And if we are legitimately between the two, what would we have beyond us and the ultimately brighter side? We would have possibly whatever's creating the sun, right? And then we would have beneath us possibly whatever's creating that moon effect. So there are, of course, the occult of the black sun, right? These sorts of things. So a lot of these ideas, when you start looking at the math and the quantum information sort of theory and these different aspects of reality, and you start realizing, wait a minute, okay, I'm going to look at black hole and white hole differently than if I have to fly out in a spaceship and gain access to these things. I'm going to look at these things as though these are embedded within everything we know about reality, including every single atom in my body and yours. So that's how I'm looking at it. All right. Which is why it may not make sense to some of you, but you've got to look at everything is everything all at the same time. Okay. And that can be completely confusing and confounding. But once you can see that all of these aspects and all of these sorts of, not really laws, but ideas affect everything both within and outside of you, then you can kind of grasp a little bit better the complex and just absolutely beautiful nature of what we're taking place in here. So now then, all right, there was something here that was telling me about some of, if you were looking for, and I don't see it, of course. Yeah, of course I don't see it. There was a thing speaking about if you're an observer within a black hole and the light source was moving away from you, how it would have a red shift and how that equates into what we each see as the sun setting and rising, how it comes through a red shift and then becomes more present in our reality. Again, these things don't apply to any one cosmogony, but they are underlying sort of everything there. So dealing with entropy, we're dealing with thermodynamics, we're dealing with some pretty heavy topics, and you know, the stuff is amazing to look into some of this and see the detail that's taking place all around us. Oh, like I was saying, anyway, sorry about that. Effect of time reversal on some variables in classical physics. So these are things that cannot change or do not change upon time reversal. All right. And these are some things that do change. Now, time reversal can be looked at this, right? Just the effect of looking back into the past, right? Of viewing the past is a time reversal. Okay. So you don't actually have to move anything around. Just observing it creates the effect, right? Some variables that time reversal negates might be magnetic field. So my thought is with this, an electromagnetic vector potential. So my thought of is this: when we have these massive plasma events, as they've been known and understood as, when we have these plasma events, okay, when we have this shift, this reset shift, plasma event, major catastrophe sort of thing that's taking place, This could simply be a time reverse process. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean that to those within the equation or within the happening that it would appear as anything is being reversed. It would just appear as a shift of energy. It would just appear as a shifting of the poles, possibly, as an electrical storm, as a plasma event. This is viewed from the inside. Meanwhile, if being viewed by the super observer, it could just be what is being cast into the equation is consciousness itself, because there is an observer taking part in observing that thing. Again, it seems to depend on how um, aware, possibly like omnipotent awareness, how aware the observer is, what effect is had on the nature of what it is they're observing. So hopefully that'll make sense to you folks. I'm just putting it out there. I'm working through the stuff mentally, and kind of taking a look at some of my notes and things, and I'm just sharing it with everybody out here. You know what I mean? Just sharing that stuff, man. And it goes to the idea of why is everything patterned out in our world like a grid, or the ebb and flow of stock markets, all of this sorts of stuff, is that essentially, no matter how you look at what is known as reality, each existence or reality is a closed loop. Okay. And that's what's playing, is that experience within that closed loop. So to understand a different set of physical rules, you would have to be understanding or observing a different reality, in a sense. So anyway, it's mind-blowing stuff. I'm enjoying the heck out of looking through all of this, and I'm just glad to be able to bring some of you folks along. I'm hoping that this can just egg you on and motivate you. You know what I mean? When you're looking into some of this stuff, in the beginning, none of it's going to make any sense. It's going to be kind of all over the place. But after a little while, you're going to find one thing that ties to something you were looking at maybe a year ago, and you're going to find all these different sorts of insights, and especially like within yourself, man. When you start looking at how things work with each other, everything, everywhere, everyone works with something else, and typically it works with its opposite, and that's amazing. I know from like a personal experience, I have the opposite part of me than I am today existed what's known in my past, right? That opposite part of me has enabled me to look at that in retrospect and understand sort of the dynamic of the thoughtlessness and the sort of lacking of insight, motivation, and intuition that I had previously, allows me to appreciate and understand that now I have so much more. And it's also helping me to understand that the capacity that we can operate at is so much more still, right? So where once upon a time I looked at humanity in a very dark light and really didn't see what the point was or anything like that. I'm sort of beginning to piece the puzzle together, and it's beginning to take shape, and it's beginning to become this incredible picture that I never thought existed. I thought that this was more just a two-dimensional sort of projection, kind of like we see in the Matrix, and it gets kind of, you get feeling imprisoned and down and all this sort of stuff. So I went through all of that. I went through all of that stuff, and it turns out that you can go through all of that, and you can come out the other side. So you can kind of exit sort of that pocket of time, right? That is being used for reversal, for the rewinding of the sort of mass mindset, right? So you can kind of escape that a little bit, is what I'm finding. And I'm eager to know if there are some of you out there that are finding that you're able to escape your old cycle also, and that the one that you're stepping into is just incredibly profound and dynamic. And I had you might be asking, like, wow, what is it that's making you kind of feel this way, Randy? What's going on in your life? Man, I had my son tell me for the first time yesterday, Dad, he goes, Dad, for the first time ever, I could see how beautiful the world is. And you know, that that right there, that had me, right? That had me so good. Still has me really good. I find that amazing. I mean, we're talking a 12-year-old kid here. I remember being 12. I wasn't too stoked on the world. In fact, I think I may have hated humanity the most back then. But to hear that from him, I mean, it was a beautiful afternoon. Don't get me wrong; it was a stunningly beautiful afternoon. I'm out here in the Midwest. We've got a beautiful spring happening right now. Uh, Puffy clouds in the sky. Typically, they don't seem to spray quite so hard on a Sunday morning, so that's nice. So last night, they weren't hitting it too heavy either. But all that aside, just amazing. So I want to extend my gratitude and love to everybody out there and say, hey, thank you for being a co-observer in this reality with me, and remind you that there's power of yours to be had. Do your best to not be afraid of it. It's going to be jarring at first once you start to take on new understandings, and um, you're going to have questions. You're going to have questions more and more than you ever had before. You're going to find a face value answers. The earth isn't a globe. You're going to find these things, and these things are going to lead you. They're going to lead you down an upward hill, if that makes any sense, towards your understanding. And I'm so happy for you for making the journey. And I'm just grateful that you all are here to observe this with me. And I want to thank you for, being a part of my own mental experiment here, because it does seem to spark motivation to know that I can convey these ideas and get feedback from folks that are doing their own thing, are going down their own journey in their own path, in an upward direction, and are finding light, amidst the darkness. And again, I think we're in a very unique place, where it's super dark and it's super bright, and we have to choose what we pull down and what we bring up. And so I offer you all my sincerest gratitude and love. And hey, have a great rest of whatever it is for you, a day or night, a morning or an evening. Have a great one. And I just wanted to say thanks. And yeah, go check out some previous episodes and stuff. Man, I got lots of stuff. Lots of stuff. I got lots of stuff on there, guys. A lot of different ideas, a lot of different concepts that have all sort of rattle on through here. And absolutely, there's a lot of random stuff out there, and hence the name. So yes, go check out some of that older stuff. There's a lot of gems. We've got the Vedic texts, we've got the Yuga cycles. All this stuff links right in with where we're going into some heavy stuff in this time situation here. And I've got some reading to do, guys. I've got a lot more reading to do. That way I can sort of bring this stuff down and scream about it from my soapbox. You know what I mean? So have a good one.